Hello, welcome everybody. I feel powerful with the microphone. And you will too soon, my speakers today. So, welcome. Oh, I'm so glad to have you all here for our what is becoming our annual Speak Out event, where students get to have an audience. Thank you very much to all of you to talk about things that they've been working on all semester long, things that are important to all of us. So, my name is Mike McGuire, and we're here today with my Composition 2 students. And again, we're thrilled to have an audience. We don't always have a live audience, despite the thousands of invitations we all send out. But I know it's a very busy time of year, so I'm thankful to have you all here. We also have a video camera in the room, thanks to our wonderful multimedia people. And this event will be recorded. So I'd like to remind my students that the audience is even bigger than the one in the room at this moment, because it will be archived in the library and then made available on the library's YouTube site as well. So the audience is a future one and a larger one, so that others can be influenced, informed, inspired by their ideas. So this is a good thing. I know I'm more excited about this than my speakers are, but I hope they'll appreciate it as well one day. So let's see. This is a research writing class, Com 102, and this semester my students have been researching pressing social issues that are important to our communities. And the approach we've taken to this research wasn't a traditional just in the library kind of research project, but rather one that was designed to get them beyond the library out into the field, so to speak. So we used an approach called critical service learning. Critical service learning is a combination of a meaningful service with the community, civic skills, and an enhanced academic experience. The intersection of those three things is critical service learning. And the aim of all of this was to and is to affect positive social change in our communities around these issues that the students have been working on. They've partnered with over 23 community nonprofit organizations this semester, organizations that focus on issues ranging from food insecurity and homelessness to animal rights to early childhood education, ecological restoration, and everything in between. Quite a range of issues, honestly, that they've been working on. All of this, of course, is aimed at affecting positive change in our communities, as I've mentioned. And today, you are a part of that change. So please listen carefully today with an open mind and an open heart, as these wonderful speakers today weave together a story of self, our story of us, and most significantly, the story of now. So, our speakers, Michaela, where are you? Come on. Oh, I'm sorry, a couple quick technical notes. Oh, I left on such a strong note for you, and I forgot to make the technical notes. Speak into the microphone. Don't walk over there in front of that speaker, you'll get feedback. And what was the other note? Yeah, the one over there. I guess that's it.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Michaela Price, and I worked with the Syrian Community Network, so that's why it's over there for now. So as a kid growing up, I always wanted to be just like Nancy Drew. I admired her confidence and her ability to solve a mystery at such a young age. Now today, Americans have a mystery on their hands, whether they know it or not, and it's why we fear immigrants and the immigration crisis. Now, like most of you, I would be scrolling through my Facebook and other social media feeds, and I would see all these videos about the Syrians and the bombings going on and the gassings, and not really understanding what was happening and what side to believe and who was in the right and who was in the wrong, and other buzzwords like ISIS and terrorism that really made me afraid. But instead of just sitting there and making my own assumptions like we usually do, I decided that this would be my Nancy Drew moment and to solve this mystery for myself. And I thought the best way to do this was to go to a first-person perspective and meet with a Syrian refugee family. So through the Syrian Community Network, I met with the vice president, and her name is Hadia, and she was my translator. And we met with a family in Hickory Hills. And the apartment complex that they lived in, I remembered from where I lived when I was younger. I was always afraid of it. I didn't really understand what was there, what was going on. I always saw the police. I was afraid, So going in there was a big moment for me because I learned that those fears were really illogical because I met a family that was so beautiful and brave and have become my friends. So a little bit about this family. They actually grew up in the town where the revolution began. And their oldest son, who is 6 years old, was born just days before it began. So the father peacefully took to the streets to protest against the unjust dictatorship. And to just say a little bit about what they have to go through even now is they have to still wear military uniforms to school. They have to hide certain books that they are reading. They can't talk anything bad about the government whatsoever. And what really shocked me was that you can't even openly pray in a mosque. And this is a Muslim country that we're talking about here. You know, things like that would never happen here in America. And Hadia, she actually had a friend who was arrested and brutally tortured for 12 years just for doing this. And this family was brave enough to actually let runaways into their home and hide from the military. And at one point, they actually hid someone underneath their bed, and by a miracle, you know, this person survived. But when they got here, of course, they didn't forget about all this. It didn't go away. They still carried this baggage of PTSD on top of all of these new fears that they feel now in America. You know, learning the language. The father's a painter, so he doesn't really have any coworkers to communicate with, or just, you know, assimilating into our culture or feeling comfortable or gaining back that wealth that they had in their home. So sitting there on their couch, I realized that I had all these fears, all these misunderstandings, and they have all these fears still. So what is there really to be afraid of? And that's why I'm here today, to tell you all that what happens when you actually go through that fear instead of just sitting in your own comfortable bubble. And when you push through that fear, you actually find a whole new sense of comfort that I would have never found before from all of this understanding and knowledge that I have gained. And not only that, I've gained friends. And the one thing that I'll remember about this family most of all is they have a notebook where they're learning English, and Arabic is on the left and English is on the right. And there's basic sayings like, how are you? You know, how's the weather? The basic depth to an American conversation, you know. But at the end, he translated, everything will be okay. So if you'd like to know more about this family and their story, I'm starting a podcast. It's in the basic, you know, works right now. But if you feel really committed and you want to learn and meet your own family and tell their own unique story, I really suggest you going to the SyrianCommunityNetwork.org. Even if you don't feel it right now, just take a picture of it, just write it down for some time later when you see it and really feel moved. And please realize this could be your own moment to be Nancy Drew and solve your own mystery. So thank you.
Hello? Okay. Sorry. Hi, I am Desiree Quinlan. I worked with the Carol Robertson Center for Learning. My story was, I grew up in a little bit of a hard childhood, not going out very much. My dad was very protective. My mom was my rock. My mom got me through school and taking me to karate and Girl Scouts. Girl Scouts was my teaching. I got to be with the little girls in summer day camps and teach them how to build a campfire and how to start a fire and teach them basic life skills in Girl Scouts. I also taught karate to little boys, and they were amazing. I even taught a little autistic kid. That was the most exhilarating experience I ever had, because disability is a hard thing to teach because you have to try and keep them attention, and it's hard, very hard. And my love for being with children is what got me into the Carol Robertson Center for Learning, because I loved working with kids so much. So I connected that with my service learning project. The Carol Robertson Center for Learning was started by two parents, which lost their daughter in a bombing in Birmingham, Alabama. It was a church bombing, very sad. But they started this center for African American and Hispanic kids, but they take any other child, anyone that's in need, and parents drop their kids off as early as 6 a.m. and they pick them up as late as 6 p.m. And they've got after school care and tutoring and they also have a lot of activities for the kids, especially the ones that are after school, so that it gets their mind off of school, because some kids have really trouble with academics. So they go play basketball or baseball, and that gets their mind off, and then they go do their homework with the tutor, which helps them a lot, because a lot of kids have trouble focusing. And then they have a gross motor room, which is a big gym, basically. And they only go there for 15 minutes, but it's better than not going there at all. And they play with bouncy balls and basketballs and stairs and building blocks. It's like being outside, but it's an indoor thing. And I just wish that they had a little bit more time there, because being outside with that is so important for children. You have to get them moving, get them active, very active. So if you're ever interested in being a volunteer at Carroll Robertson Center for Learning, go to the website and be that child's advocate, because these children need people. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kylie, and I wanted to start off by saying that I'm an animal activist. And a show of hands, how many of you have a pet at home? Okay, majority of you. Can you imagine being locked in a cage, not knowing if it's night or day out, being forced to fight for your life, or someone else gambling on yours? Even having medicine and makeup tested on you. These are many things animals face every day. Animal rights need to be established so they can benefit all. Animals for the right reasons. Animals are misused and mistreated all the time. Thousands of dogs are put under for overcrowding reasons beyond their control, because they cannot get adopted in time. Animal Welfare League shelter. I went into a room there, and it was a sick dog room. It's full of sick animals. And seeing this made me realize how much better the situation could be if animals had their rights. Yes, animal welfare does all they can to help these animals, but is it really enough? There are alternative routes they can take to help these animals and need to better them. The animals I saw, for the most part, were being treated as the same as they would on the adoption floor, but behind closed doors. The reason this is heartbreaking to me is because I know that there's other reasons or other ways that they can help these animals. If they had the correct funding, there would be alternate routes that can help with the animals. Animal testing has been around for 100 plus years. Animal testing is morally wrong and wasteful. It is bad science and lazy science. If proper laws were in place for these animals and animal testing, there wouldn't be this big of an issue today. Most of the animals they test on for hair and makeup, medicine, and products are cats, dogs, rabbits, and mice, and the list continues. An estimated amount of animals being tested on annually are 25 million a year, according to ASPCA. Not including genetic engineering on mice and rats, that would be around 100 million. In an article written by International Medical Modernization Committee, they said that animal testing is an unfound method to investigate human disease. The billions of dollars that are spent on animal testing is insufficient. It would be more effective if we used in clinical studies. Almost all of us in this room are pet owners, and I'm sure we could all agree that animal testing can be preventable. Virtually all animal testing funding is paid from your tax dollar. Over $12 billion is spent every year on animal testing. You do have a say in whether or not this can be stopped. We can stop the poisoning, shocking, burning, and killing of these animals. If these acts were performed outside, it would be a felony. I believe there's alternate routes to take this way. I think we can become all cruelty-free. I brought in this bottle. It's from Bath & Body Works. It's a shower gel. And on the mark, I put a mark on the back that says, not tested on animals. This is only one of many products you can use that is animal testing free. Some products that are not animal testing free are Crest, Dove, and Glad, and the list continues. One of the last topics I want to talk about is animal fighting. There are multiple ways this can be done. There is chicken fighting, dog fighting, and even mice wars. A lot of cultures believe this is the way it's supposed to be. Animal fighting is illegal nationwide. It is considered animal cruelty. If you raise an animal's upbringing to fight, that's all it will know. Animals all have instincts, but if you raise an animal to kill, that will be its go-to for every feeling it gets. Love, hate, they both will mean the same. While I was volunteering at the shelter, there was a pit bull there with blood all over its cage. The pit bull had blood all over its cage because it was brought in from animal fighting. When I asked one of the volunteers that had been there for a long time, that's what she told me. She said that was the only dog out of all the 5 years that she's been there that it's broken out of the metal bars in the cage. You can clearly see like the hate in its eyes and how it's just been mistreated and abused. In some cases, animal fighting can be so bad that the animals are beaten by its owner just to obey the owner's commands. Dogs give us their absolute all. We are the center of their universe. Dogs are so loyal that they will obey any command it gets by their owners. Over 65,000 times a year, there is a new animal fight ring broken up. I believe if animals had their rights and were looked at more than just as something to gamble on, that people would treat them different with more respect. If animals were to rule the world one day, how many of these situations would go the other way around? Thank you.
Is it working? Hello? Okay, cool. All right. I don't have anything to put on the board, so I'm just going to put my name on there, I guess, but I'm just going to tell you my name. So my name is Laith. So, the United States of America, also known as the melting pot. Inside of this pot, there's a lot of different people that come from different cultures, different races, practice different religions. They also speak different languages. And they also have different traditions. I was born and raised in Jordan, where the population was mostly made of Jordanians and Palestinian refugees. 90% of these two countries have the same cultures, traditions, language, and they also practice the same language. Practicing religion. Now, you see where I'm going with this? There's barely any diversity. So growing up as a kid, it was kind of easy. You really didn't need to know anything about me other than where I live and if I'm good at soccer or not. So that's what they mostly play is soccer. I came to the United States when I was 12. I thought it would be easy. I didn't think it was big of a deal. I can play soccer. I'm not that worried. I didn't know how diverse this country is. My father never told me about it, and I don't blame him. You see, when my mom, my sister, and I came here, all my dad was doing in the U.S. is just work and work and work. Like that song by Rihanna and Drake. So the point is, my father never had a chance to fully understand the diversity and then tell me about it so I can be fully aware of it. So I had to learn on my own by meeting new people, asking them about their culture, their religion, and just kind of meeting new people in general. Awareness of the diversity around us is the climax of the story here. Sometimes we think we know what a certain race or a religion is all about, but we really don't. For example, in 8th grade, I was bullied for a little while because I was Muslim. One time this kid told me, "Go back to Islam." I still remember this day just kind of laughing about it to myself and just asking myself, like, does he really, he doesn't know the difference between Islam and just my country? There are two different things. So I had to tell him. That was my little comeback. It was 8th grade. I didn't really know how to come back. But another example, one time my Indian friend from high school told me a story about how someone wanted to make fun of his father by asking him, does his father own a gas station? Little as that kid knew, my friend's father was an engineering professor at UIC. Now, the idea here is to educate yourself, educate your children about other races, beliefs, religions. So, not so you can bully someone else, by knowing what their religion is all about, but hold on, I lost my track. But it's God damn it, I lost it. Hold on. But I'm sorry. Okay, so it's really what this country is all about. This is what the United States is like. When you come here, like you're going to be living in a certain area where your people are going to be around you. And then after that, you'll learn that this country has a lot more than just your country. So I just want you to ask yourself, do you know people that practice different religions? Do you know people that, have different beliefs and values than you? And do you know about this religion or these values, his culture, her culture? If you don't, well, you need to go out there and meet new people so you can educate yourself. Thank you.
My name is Kerry Boyle, and I'm standing up for the voice of the voiceless, which basically I am an animal activist. I have grown up always loving animals, and people would always joke saying that I was always at the right place at the right time when it comes to rescuing animals, whether it be a kitten stuck in a tree or just a dog roaming the streets. I'll never forget the day that saving animals became a bigger responsibility to me. It was a cold, rainy, snowy, probably January morning when I was driving to my mom's work. And while I was driving, I saw a dog just laying in the middle of the intersection. And this was like a busy street. It was out like in Willowbrook, so it's like traffic was, at the peak, and nobody was stopping and helping the dog. They just kept driving around him. So with being an animal lover, I just felt like I didn't even think. I just pulled over in the middle of where I was at, and I got out of the car and I started screaming at everyone to stop. Like I look like a crazy person because I'm yelling at everybody like, "You need to stop! There's a dog in the road!" Like you would think this is a child. And people stopped. Like there was nobody was turning. It was just dead. And I just remember I took off my hoodie and I picked up this dog, and it wasn't little. She was probably about 60 pounds, like a medium-sized dog, and I picked her up and I carried her to, I was by a church parking lot, so I sat down in the church parking lot and I was sitting with this dog, and you can tell she's been there for a while because she was just soaking wet. She had, her leg probably was broken, she was freezing, she was shivering, and she just kept looking at me with security. It's like she found hope in me because nobody else stopped to help her. Even when the police came, she didn't want to leave my side. And all I could think is, what if I didn't decide to go to my mom's work that day? What if I decided to just stay home or go do something with my friends? Where were her owners? I kept thinking. She must have been there for hours. People kept saying, yeah, when I finally did talk to someone, they're like, yeah, that dog's been sitting there. I'm like, well, why didn't you do anything? And they're like, well, we thought the owners would come. Oh, because the owners definitely know that the dog's laying in the middle of the street right now. So while I was waiting, the police finally took the dog, and the thing that broke my heart is he told me that he couldn't tell me where he was bringing the dog because it was confidential information since the dog did have an owner. I spent hours that day searching shelters and animal hospitals to find out where this dog went, just to make sure that her owners knew that she was missing and that she got hurt. I was even willing to somehow pay for anything that she needed done, because it seemed like she wasn't taken care of because she was really skinny, and like you could just tell like her owners didn't really have much interest in her. I never did find her, and I still till this day don't know what happened to her. Shortly after, I started visiting animal shelters just for fun. Like, I've always done that since I was little, but now I felt like I just wanted to go and play with dogs just like her that maybe didn't have a loving home and were brought back to the shelter for really not good reasons at all. Now I've had the opportunity to actually be a volunteer at the Animal Welfare League on Southwest Highway, as many of you probably know about. Now I work with animals that are abused, neglected, lost, and forgotten. It is truly eye-opening to hear some of the stories of what these animals went through. All those innocent lives that don't deserve the things that they've seen, and all the hope that they've lost because of what somebody else did to them. I believe that this is an issue that needs to be addressed and that it cannot keep being pushed aside. I am extremely passionate about animals, obviously, and standing up for their rights and being a voice to the voiceless. As I would walk down the aisles, I would make eye contact with each dog and cat in the cage and spend a little extra time just giving them my undivided attention, just so they know that someone cared and that someone saw them. It tears me apart because I wish that I could adopt them all, obviously. Like, if I could, I would take every dog home, but that's not even illegal, so... imagine now, like, you're walking through a room with just 1,000 eyes staring back at you. Just sad eyes. It's just it's honestly, like, heartbreaking. And the eyes of the abused, the lost, and neglected, just hoping that you would pick them. Some that have been there for years. The saddest one I've seen was there for 7 years, and she was the sweetest dog ever, but nobody wanted her because she was older. If you want to help today, we as a community can stand up for these animals and their rights by simply choosing adoption, spreading the word about adoption, and no to inbred animals. The animals in the shelters are the ones who need us the most, and they've been waiting for someone to choose them. Just like the dog I found that day, some just need a better owner, and that could be you, or it could be your friend or your grandma, or anyone you know that's just lonely and needs somebody. According to ASPCA, 70 million stray animals live in the U.S., and approximately 6.5 thousand companion animals enter U.S. shelters nationwide every year. In statistics on One Green Planet, I found that nearly half the animals that land in U.S. shelters are euthanized because of lack of space and people willing to adopt. Now, that amounts to 2.7 million dead animals every year. So today, all I have to say is we can no longer just hope for change. We need to be the change and to take necessary steps to create a new statistic for the suffering animals in America. We can no longer push the issue aside. The hard truth is that if we don't do anything about it now, it will only get worse with time, and these animals will begin to lose hope. So if you are here today and are listening and you love animals just as much as I do, make the change today. Choose life, choose adoption, spread the word. You don't have to be the one to adopt, but you can help someone else choose adoption. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. How we all doing? So, looking back at most of my childhood, I can't forget about all the times that I spent riding my bike. You know, like, my bike was my freedom. It was my sense of independence, really. And you know, I can never forget, like, I would take my bike and put it on its handlebars and its seat, and I would spin it around in a wheel. You know, it felt fun, and I would oil up a chain. It made me feel like kind of like a mechanic or an adult in some way. And then when I would go out to, you know, hang out with my friends, I would stop and say goodbye to my mom, and then she would tell me all the places that I shouldn't go, like, in all the streets I shouldn't cross. But, you know, I saw this as a challenge, really. Like, I kind of set myself out to go to those places. So then I would ride by my friend's house, you know, and then they would meet me up, and we would just, hang out, go to the park and whatnot. But I always had one friend who never really had a bike, and he kind of felt like he lost his sense of freedom. Freedom's a beautiful thing. It's something that goes unappreciated in America nowadays. So, and I start to think, like in places like in third world countries, how they don't have the freedoms that we have. They don't have luxuries. They don't have cars. They don't even have bikes, or let alone like running water. So what I did was, when I started working with the Working Bikes Foundation, they take bikes from anywhere they can find them, junkyards, donations. They take these bikes and they use them in every single way. No part goes unused. And, when I first got there, the guys, they seemed very nice, and they were telling me about how they can use bikes to pump water from a well, things that I would never think of. And that's amazing for people that, can't do that, and they get to have a way to get from place to place besides walking, barefoot across a dirt road. And so I ask you today, if you have a bike in your garage just collecting dust, why not just take that bike that you don't use, drive it on over to the Working Bikes Foundation, and donate it so you can help somebody who needs it. Thank you. You can Google Working Bikes organization. I'm not too sure about that. Yeah, it's downtown. That's all I know. All right, thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tasha Daviros, and like Mitch, I also was part of the Working Bikes organization. Growing up, like Mitch, I loved bikes. I loved traveling. I love exploring new things. It was kind of like my go-to growing up, that and sports. Especially with my friends, as a kid, I used to modify my bike. I used to put cards in between the spokes so it sounded like a motorcycle. It was pretty stupid, but at the time it was fun. Also, when I was growing up, I actually grew up in Greece for most of my childhood. So going there, I actually realized that a lot of people there, people may think Greece is kind of like a luxurious getaway for a lot of tourists and people. It is, but if you go more inland, it's actually almost third world. It technically is a third world country now, so it's a lot of people do have hardships there. So going there, I realized people, they walk everywhere, just like in a lot of countries in Africa, which is astounding to me, especially in the villages that my parents are from. So all the bikes there that they have are either broken, the tires don't work, the spokes are off, something's not working with these bikes. So while I was there this past summer, I actually purchased a bike for there's probably 30 kids in the village that I'm from, but I purchased a bike for one of them because I obviously can't purchase 30. So I purchased a bike for one of them, and the face that they made when I actually brought it to them, and they were just astounded, and they were just I'll never forget the reaction that they had. So that kind of opened my eyes up, and kind of told myself this is what we can do. This is what one person can do for just anyone in the world, especially with people that don't have the resources. So since I started this class and since I started researching this project with Working Bikes, put the website later, it kind of opened my eyes up even more than it was before in terms of helping these people. When I actually visited the organization, they told me some cool facts. They told me, some guy told me about which countries in Africa they actually donate to, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Uganda. So that was kind of a really interesting fact that I didn't know. So other people mentioned before, bikes can change lives completely in terms of, because some people have to walk, miles upon miles just to find the nearest source of water, just to even go to school or whatever the case may be. So for someone to have a bike and to share it with their friends or with their family, it makes a huge difference. And actually, according to the Washington Post, which I found kind of crazy, 2 out of every 10 people in third world countries have a decent source of transportation that's not walking. So I think that was a really crazy fact. So going and working with this organization kind of opened up my eyes, and everyone can actually make a difference. So if you guys have like, you know, a bike that's just in your garage just sitting around and you don't even like riding your bike, you can actually donate it, or you can visit the organization and help them work with other members and try and donate bikes to other countries. They donate all throughout Africa and Europe. So these people deserve better lives than what they've had. They've been through years of war and famine and just real hardship, and they don't deserve anything, you know, like this. So recycling is also a huge part of it as well. So the fact that I can make a difference, and I'm just like a regular person in the United States, and I can make a huge difference for these people in Africa was really huge, because a lot of people don't think that they can do anything 5,000 miles away, which they really can. And it's kind of a big deal to try and get Africa back to, you know, basically not third world, and make it a relevant continent again, and the countries inside of it as well. So I urge you all to, you know, visit Working Bikes organization, which you mentioned is in the city. Not a lot of your time. It's just, I was there for like maybe 3-4 hours, and I learned so much in that time. It was kind of like a huge eye-opening experience for me. So I urge you all to not only donate and recycle your old bike parts, but just to visit the organization, you know, kind of educate yourselves about the issues there, and you can probably make a huge difference for them. So that's it.
Okay. I'm Jack Daugherty, and this semester I did my service learning at the Animal Welfare League in Chicago Ridge on Southwest Highway. I chose this service learning opportunity because I've been surrounded by rescue animals my whole life. Currently, I have a dog and a cat, both being rescue animals. We got my dog, Buster, 7 years ago when he was just a puppy from an animal shelter in Plainfield. When we got there, he's a weird breed. He's a cattle dog, so he's all speckled, and he has a big spot. And we chose him because he looked unique compared to the other animals, and he had a background. He was previously adopted twice and brought back. He was mistreated and neglected, so we thought it would be a good idea to adopt him. And here he is 7 years later, we still have him. When we first got him, he had his fair share of problems. He was just afraid of hardwood floors and the garage, and he wasn't potty trained at all. So after a year of working with him, we eventually got him to walk on the floors. We potty trained him, and now he's not scared of the garage anymore. Everyone who's adopted an animal before knows the challenges that come with it. Even if you haven't adopted an animal yourself, you most likely know someone who does. Some of these families can't handle the challenge and end up returning the animal to the shelter. Along with my dog, my cat was also almost returned to the shelter by my grandma. But we didn't let that happen. We adopted her. We took her from my grandma. Walking around in the shelter makes you feel like you're in a sad dog commercial. Like, it honestly does. While walking around in the room in the back with the big dogs, walking down each aisle, you see each dog, some happier than others, some excited, some seem like they've given up. Each of these dogs has a story of why they're there, just like how my dog and how he's returned twice. The main issue is the rights that animals have. Many are abused, mistreated, and even tested on laboratories. A lot of these animals end up back in the shelter. Some are even killed off if they're not adopted in time. I have friends who have adopted animals as well, and they say they have a very good connection with the animal. These dogs and cats know when they've been saved, not just dogs and cats. People think that shelter animals are broken and not worth the time, but in reality, they're just like any other animal, just in need of help. I think people need to be more educated before adopting animals, since most shelter animals are given up by previous owners. The Animal Welfare League does a good job of preventing ill-suited owners because they run their own background checks before they allow you to adopt. All these animals in the Animal Welfare League shelter and any other shelter deserve a second chance at being free and alive, not just stuck in a cage. That's why if you're planning on getting a pet or know someone who is, spread the word or go adopt the pet. You'll have a much richer connection with it, and you will save it from a life in a cage. You may only have this animal for 10 or so years, but it's a lifetime for them. Thank you.
I'm like a lot shorter. There we go. Look. Oh, no, this is good. This is good. Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Jessica. I kind of want to play a little activity with you guys. If you guys can please just like imagine your favorite place in the whole entire world. Like close your eyes if it helps. A place where everything just feels right. A place that you can kind of just like breathe a little bit easier. But then again, it also like takes your breath away. So I wonder how many of those places are outside in nature. I'm going to tell you about mine. If I close my eyes, like, tight, and imagine my favorite spot in the whole entire world, it's on my grandparents' ranch rooftop in Durango, Mexico. This spot in particular is my favorite because it's like a window to nature's most purest beauty, like uninterrupted by man. Biodiversity flourishes as green foliage blankets valleys and wraps around mountains, whose green foliage is contained by the grazing of goats and cows, where clear, beautiful skies meet rich mountain peaks and interweb communities of scorpions, snakes, and countless amounts of insects contribute to the checks and balances of natural selection, and where wild coyotes howl as they hover on top of the food chain, but whose existence is only supported by the life brought on by the foliage, the flowering of cacti, agave, and other native plants. I love this spot. And it's a spot that I want to share, yet selfishly keep to myself. A spot that I hope freezes in time so one day my daughter can find it for herself. I want this spot for you all. And beauty in nature is a human right to be experienced, our right to be experienced, but it's an experience that we may not be all undeserving. We have spots like these in our own backyards, which is the Forest Preserve. The Forest Preserve is a wonder of intertwining communities of, life that we have right there for us. So the only thing is that this, our Forest Preserve is being threatened by the introduction of invasive species. Invasive species, for those who don't know, is a plant, animal, or fungus that is introduced to the land that is not native, so in our case, not native to Illinois, that spreads in a harmful rate and causes damage to the local environment. According to the National Wildlife Federation, invasive species are primarily spread by humans. So like when it comes to plants, it's ornamental plants, so like decorative, pretty plants. I volunteered for the Palos Restoration Project, which is a group that helps in keeping the forest healthy. They cut down invasive plants and then kind of regrow the native ones to kind of encourage the biodiversity that was already there. It was a very rewarding experience. But it's sadly, now I can't unsee what I saw. I can't unsee the damage that has been done to our forests. So, driving down, I can no longer unsee, all the invasive plants that are, right there. So now I don't just see pretty green trees. Now I see, oh, no, this has to be cut down. And I can try to convince you to go and volunteer. The only thing is, I know most of you guys won't. So I am here to ask a much simpler task, and that's one that doesn't even involve going out and working. It's to think before you buy. So I think a big factor in the conservation movement is prevention. So think before you buy that pretty plant that is native to a land across the ocean, but not to ours. Think before you buy that tree whose seedlings will suck the nutrients and starve the life of our native forests. Because those plants and trees in your backyard will travel by ingestion of birds or small creatures to the woods nearby and spread like the unwanted weeds they are. So think before you buy that seed mix of future invasive plants just to hear today's bird songs. There is bliss in ignorance. I know it. But there's no windows to nature's beauty for future generations to come in that ignorance. I know most of you guys have smartphones, probably everybody. So it's just really easy. Before you go buy anything, just go in invasive.org, again, invasive.org, and just research what plants are invasive species, so to avoid buying those, and to see which ones are native to the land, so that encourages the growth and the foliage of what we already have. And I would kind of want you guys to prove me wrong and go volunteer. It's really easy. The Forest Preserve makes it super easy. They have groups all around Chicago and Palos and everything like that. And go and see what it takes to preserve that window or that favorite spot for you, and you. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello. Okay, that's on. So hello, everybody. I'm Hannah, and I also worked with the Palos Restoration Project, but I focused on more like a man-made problem that we have today. I focused on the waste that clogs our forests and how recyclables can be picked up around everywhere and be used to create something different. When I was 15, I'm proud of this. I got my grandparents to start recycling, and because they live in a neighborhood that doesn't really recycle. But when I asked them about it, they were like, we'll give it a try, whatever. They didn't promise anything. But visiting them and going up to see them and seeing their progress about how they separated their, recyclables from their trash, like, it's a good feeling, and it helps so much, even just a little bit. Yeah, every little bit helps. Like, even that, pop can, or like, the Dunkin' can, the cups, or like the Starbucks cups, just, putting them in the right bin can, really benefit something, because then you can make another one of those or make something different out of it. So recycling, it just benefits everybody. It is very costly to go out and, have cleanup crews, and, we pay for it. Like, our environment pays for it, and we pay for it, because that's our money that we're spending to go clean up something that we could have just put in a, really easy put in a bin and, cut out the middleman right there. And the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, when I looked on there, there's a statistic that really shocks me, and it's if we take up all the plastic bottles that are rotting in landfills right now instead of being reused, we could stretch around the globe 3 times, at least 3 times. That statistic, I think, was a year or so old, so I can't even imagine how much it is right now. There are really easy ways to help out. Like, you can look before you throw away, like that water bottle right there. We have a lot of, right here even, we're starting to have more recyclable bins. So, just think before you throw away. And even food wrappers and different containers now, they have the symbol on the bottom of it. And we have pictures. We have what we can throw away and what we can recycle right over the garbage cans. I know that's helped me a lot, because I don't know. And I think that is another problem. We're kind of ignorant to the fact that this thing is recyclable, or we don't know if it is, so we just kind of err on the side of caution and throw it away. They take a backseat in my mind, I know. So really just stopping to think about, what you're holding or what you're throwing away. can really just benefit everything. So I implore you guys, just think before you throw away, or look, or read, or find out how you can put them away for recycling, because there is so many things around the house now that can be recycled, like, the newspapers that you guys may or may not get on Sunday mornings, or your parents might get, or I know I have one right now, but like the water bottle that we buy like every day, or just take from our house or fridge every day. Even that smallest choice can make a difference, and that choice is yours. So I implore you, make the right choice. Thank you.
How's everybody doing today? Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Okay. Just wanted everybody to know I'm from Michigan. Do you mind if I use my phone for notes? Okay. First off, I wrote on the board Pygmalion effect, and that's a Greek mythology term from the goddess Pygmalia, or Pygmalion. And the effect practically means a student earns the best grade that the teacher pushes them towards. So if Mr. McGuire pushes me towards a A, B, or C, I'm going to get an A, B, or C. But if a teacher pushes you towards an F, chances are you're going to get an F. Now, just name a teacher from 4th to 8th grade, anybody. Just say a random name. Anybody. I'm not talking to a wall right now. What's that name? Okay. Why do you remember her?
She was really cool.
Exactly. And that's 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't even need to write that down. Now, I struggle with ADHD, and I haven't been taking medications for it because you just shouldn't take medications for anything, in all honesty. And I know that from my dad being a CEO of a pharmaceutical place. Now, I've struggled going to college here because being from Michigan, I don't know anybody from Chicago, and it's a bit different in Michigan, in my opinion. I personally sat down with Mr. McGuire, and I told him my story, and he showed a lot of empathy towards me. And she was talking earlier about, excuse me, blonde hair. What's her name? Yeah. You were talking about how you can see in an animal's eyes if they've been abused or neglected or anything. And it made me think of the quote, I don't even know what rapper this is, but realize, realize, realize. If I need to write that down real quick, I will. So he obviously knew I was being truthful about my situation. Now, I was thinking about the college that I went to before this, which was Kalamazoo, which is a way bigger college, Western Michigan University. And there I've also struggled, and I've seen the same effects, and it was a way larger campus where if you went to personally talk to a teacher, they wouldn't listen to you, and you were just another brick in the wall. But here, it seems it's more personal, more connected, more of a family. I just wanted to thank everybody for today, honestly. I didn't even know if I was going to make it today. Didn't even know if I was going to give this speech. But because of this effect that Mr. McGuire has had on me, that's the only reason I'm giving this speech today, in all honesty. I hope everybody has a blessed day.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adam. And really quick before I get started, I just wanted to, everyone already said if they had a pet or an animal at home. and I just want you to keep that pet or animal in mind. I don't know what this says. But just keep that pet or animal in mind while I speak. So when I was a kid, I used to love animals, all different kinds of animals. And while other kids were watching like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, even though I had my fair share of that, I loved watching like Discovery Channel and Animal Planet. It sounds like a little nerdy, but I kind of like watching it because I loved learning about different animals all around the world, not just the ones that I knew about in my backyard. And I guess growing up, it followed me throughout my life so far. And about like 6 or 7 years ago, I had this one friend that he had a golden retriever. It was like the best golden retriever ever. It was so friendly, it was so kind, playful. And one time, because I'd love to go to his house, one time I was at his house and I was hanging out with him and playing with his dog. And I asked him, like, how do you get your dog to be so like well-behaved and well-trained and so loving? And he just like looked at me. He's like, oh, well, see, I got this collar that I have around his neck. And if he doesn't listen to me or if he doesn't behave, give him a little shock. And I don't know how I felt about that. I left his house and I didn't leave right then and there, but I thought about it for a while. And then when I was on my way home, I started thinking, I'm like, that's my friend that I've known for years, and I known his dog for a while, and I didn't think of him to be like a person to do something like that to his dog, and it's so loving. And I thought about that, and I'm like, wait, he's my friend, but I don't know what goes on in around like hundreds, thousands of homes all around that have pets in them. And that's when I felt like I kind of needed to do something, and I felt like I needed to get involved. So I joined like an animal rights group. It was a small-time animal rights group. Their hearts were in the right places, but I never felt like I was really doing anything. I felt like I wasn't like satisfied with what I was doing. And when I finally found the Animal Welfare League, that's when it actually, clicked for me. But I kind of want to go back to like, why do we care? What makes us care for these animals? And I want to go back to the story of my friend with the golden retriever. And he, after he told me about the collar, I asked him, like, well, doesn't that hurt? That hurt him? Like, it's a living creature. Has feelings, doesn't it? And he kind of like shrugged it off and looked at me and was like, well, I mean, if it listens to me after and it behaves, why do I care? And I think that's where like the issue comes, is like, why do we care? That the issue is that no one cares. And there are so many different issues in the world today, and animal rights and animal welfare doesn't really fall in like the top, like number one priority of issues. And I wanted to think back in history because, like, especially here in the United States, you think that it would be something that could be dealt with. But I wanted to go back in history, like 17th century Japan, and they had this one shogun. They actually called him the Dog Shogun, was his nickname, because his love for dogs, but not just dogs, all animals. And he would, while he was ruling, he would make sure that all animals were treated with like respect and fairness. And he had them on a little bit of like a human level, so it was kind of scary, but you get the point. It was just a little extreme example. But for those of you that are still not convinced about the animals that are, and their rights and stuff like that, how about livestock, cattle and chicken? I'm not just talking pets here, so I wanted to bring out, like cattle and chicken. I mean, they provide us with food and dairy and eggs, and I mean, that's stuff for us. At least we can do is like give back to them kind of and treat them with respect, even if it's like just humanely. There are so many different organizations that kind of like focus on these specific issues, but they all go back to one major issue, and that's the rights of animals and the well-being of these animals. During my time at the Animal Welfare League, I felt what I didn't feel when I was in the other animal rights group, and it was kind of like because of what they taught me to do. Since they actually have animals on site, unlike the animal rights group that we're just focusing on, the issue, I actually got to do like work for the animals. I got to care for these animals, and I think that's what's missing with everyone that says that they don't care or why should we care, is that they've never really got to experience that animal, caring for. And they teach you, not in the orientation, but like in like they do this little personal training before you start working there. And they tell you when you have someone that's potentially going to adopt an animal, you want to kind of like look into them. They do the background checks, but they want you to like look into this person. You know, like do they own pets? What's their history of on animals? Do they have any pets right now? If it's a dog, do they have another dog at home that this will like kind of interfere with the one you want to adopt? And you know, it really gives you the feel of you get connected to the animals that you're working with, because when you're walking up and down these aisles with cages of dogs in them. I worked in the dog area. I'm really allergic to cats, so I'm going to be talking about dogs mostly. The dogs, when you walk up and down these cages and you see inside these cages and you look at the animal and you care for it and you clean its cage and you give it water and food, you start to have a feel of like, you know, that connection feeling. You feel like you really want to care for this animal. You don't want anything to happen to it. So when you're looking at these people, you don't know what goes on in their homes. You want to know exactly, because you have to watch out for. They tell you have to watch out for signs of breeding or guard dogs and etc. You know, you just have to watch out. You don't want to just throw this animal that you've been caring for into any random home. You want to give it a good home. You know, one that you like. You want to take them all home with you, or you want them to be in a home that you would live in. So I guess that's what everyone's missing, is that you need to be connected to these animals. That's what I felt. That's when I felt a change, that these animals need everyone that feel like they don't care, but they just haven't experienced it. So I'm not asking everyone to go to the Animal Welfare League and volunteer there for hours and hours. I'll be the first one to say that when Professor McGuire told us about service learning, I was kind of like, oh man, I thought I got community service over with in high school. And, but I guess it changed. It changed my mind. I felt like, 6 hours, I felt like that was so much. I don't know why. But I felt like 6 hours was so much to do in the time that I had, because I was so busy during the week. But eventually I started finding more and more time, and every time I had extra time, I felt like going there. So I'm well over those 6 hours now, because I feel like I want to keep coming back. And I think that's what everyone needs. So I'm not asking everyone to go there for hours. You can go for 20 minutes or half an hour. Just get that, that feel of being around animals. Because I guarantee you, when you look down into that cage and you look at that animal, and you start caring for them for a little bit, you'll feel like you need to put them in a good home. Thank you.
All right, so my name is Derek. I was lucky enough to be born with a roof over my head, food on the table, a good chance of education, and good health. But when I was younger, I didn't know the difference between the things that I want and the things that I need. I was always asking for things that I wanted. But how does this relate? Well, my mom said, always kept telling me when I was younger, that there's hundreds and hundreds of people out there that have that I have that they don't have. And I didn't understand the concept behind it, because I was always seeing the people around me and my friends, and they always had the things that they wanted. And I didn't really focus on the people that need stuff. So when I was getting older, I started realizing and seeing people. On my way home from school, I always see the same homeless person walking down the street asking for change. And I see homeless people living under overpasses. On my way out to on the highway, all I could see is their blankets and their bed. But now I always kept asking myself, what if that was me? According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, there's about 550,000 homeless people in America today. So many of us, if not all of us, have the luxuries of things that many do not have. The big issue is that there are too many homeless people, and it's hard to resolve this issue quickly. Sure, there's people who have money, change on them, that actually donate these money to these homeless people. But today we live in a world where most of us have credit cards or debit cards. So, but what we can do is give a hand and donate stuff that we already have. We have shoes that we may not need, clothes, blankets, and stuff like that. Also, you can find an organization near us. There's an organization near us that it's called the Habitat of Humanity, where you can volunteer and help build small shelters for these homeless people. And this Habitat of Humanity is available Thursday through Saturday, about 8 hours a day. And what you do is interact with other volunteers and help build homeless shelters for homeless people. These are just two small ways you can help start helping the homeless, and it starts with us. Now is the time to add, because it can help you as well. We see these homeless people around the streets, living on the streets and sidewalks, and what it can cause is overcrowding and a mess on our streets that we don't need. So what we can do is we can also inform our friends and families that are close to us. Let them know the little ways that we can do, and it can make a big difference. Whether you find any extra shoes that you don't use, any clothes, or any blankets, because there's times where it gets cold and they don't have anything to use. Or you could also build shelters for these homeless people. So if we do this, we come closer to ending homelessness. Thank you.
Wow. I know we're up against the clock now, but we got through our speakers, and I can't help but feel like, geez, if I can't find something to do with all of these ideas, or if I can't feel concerned that there is something to do after hearing all of this, I don't know what would move me to action. So I wanted to thank all of our speakers today, and I really wanted to thank our audience. And it's not easy to come up here, so thank you for your courage, for all of our speakers. It's not an easy thing. I mean, it's terrifying for some. I get nervous every day when I have to do it in front of a class, and you guys probably don't know that, but I'm always a little nervous, some days more than others. But, one of the things that we've been talking about is affecting change, and how we go about doing that. And I feel that communication is really one of the central tools to affect change in our communities. And part of that communication is speaking to people, whether it's one-on-one in small groups or in front of large groups. And it's something that so many of us fear to do. So I hope that each and every one of you, seeks every opportunity you can to get in front of groups of people and talk to them about the issues that are important, and to listen to them as well, because I think that's where our change can really begin. So I know you got to go. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.